Hey guys, it's Tina, and I don't know how to do this intro, so I'm just gonna say it. I have ADHD and dyslexia. October is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I guess I'm gonna talk about it. This entire video is just my story. People's ADHD is all different. People's dyslexia is all different. This does not cover everybody that has dyslexia and ADHD, and especially if they just have one or the other, it's going to be completely different if they have both. I am not alone with these two disabilities. 15 to 20% of the population has symptoms of dyslexia. It is estimated that 30% of the dyslexic population has ADHD. 8 to 17% of the ADHD population is estimated to have dyslexia. There's quite a few people with the same disabilities as I have. But I'm still an avid reader, and it is very possible with both of these things wired into my brain working against me to be an avid reader. It's harder to maintain this hobby than a person with a neurotypical brain, but it's doable, and I do it. And I don't think I'm alone. I would not be shocked if there are quite a few people with both ADHD and dyslexia that have the hobby of reading, and a lot of people don't think about it or know about it. All of the links to the percentages that I just gave you, all of my source information, I will link below, as well as I'm probably going to throw in a bunch of other links in there for you guys to check out in case you're interested in this type of stuff. So how do these things affect my reading? With ADHD, I have problems with inattentive, working memory, hyperfocus, inner hyperactivity. I'm not outerly hyperactive, and impulsivity. I was also diagnosed with ADHD at 36. So adults can definitely have ADHD. If you are somebody wondering if you have ADHD, I would strongly urge you to go to a mental health professional and get tested, because I've been asked several times, you've lasted until 36. Why did you get tested for ADHD? Well, until 36, I have been trying to do things and work my life the neurotypical brain way, and that has not worked for me at all. I have struggled to do things the neurotypical brain way. But since I've been diagnosed, I have been trying to restructure my life around the way my brain works, and it's just a lot easier. Once I got diagnosed, I learned a lot more about ADHD, and I learned what our strengths and weaknesses is, and I learned how to structure my life in order to make things easier. I've always felt like my brain is working against me, always. So when I got diagnosed, it gave me a sense of easier structure for me to follow than what neurotypical people can follow. If you're wondering, go to a mental health professional and get tested. It may help, it may not. I don't know. If you know somebody with ADHD, give them patience. We need patience, and lots of it. Thank you. With dyslexia is dyslexia. Dyslexia is it's a language disability. It's not reading things backwards, although everybody's been taught it's reading things backwards. It's not lexdixia. Dyslexia has more issues than just reading and writing. I myself have sequency issues. I sometimes will spell a word with all the letters that are supposed to be in that word, but not in the right order. It's also a decoding issue. We have a hard time, or I should say I, because this is a lot about me and not every dyslexic person is the same. Hence, I have ADHD, which layers a whole another problem on top of the problem. The letters, while I'm reading, can move. I have found an amazing YouTube video. I will link it down below with the timestamp. It has the perfect imagery of what actually happens sometimes in my brain when I'm reading. And if you want to know what sometimes I see, check out that link below, and I'll timestamp it, and you can see how life is sometimes. It's not all the time. Every day is not the same thing. There's sometimes that I read like I don't have dyslexia. I read perfectly fine. Everything comes out fine. And then there's days where I literally just can't decode any letters. And it's a struggle. That's probably an over-exaggeration. I can always read, but sometimes it's just a huge, huge struggle. I read slowly. Sometimes I don't comprehend everything I'm reading. Sometimes it's hard for me to follow line by line, and I'll skip words, sentences. Sometimes I can read and not absorb anything. Some fonts are extremely hard to read for me, and the dyslexia font does not work for me at all. It does nothing. I can't read any better or worse with that font. The more frustrated I get, the worse my reading will get. So if I'm extremely emotional, I just don't try to read because it won't happen. In school, that was a huge, huge thing. A test. I have test anxiety. So yeah, I did horrible on tests in school. How did I make it this far in life with this stubbornness? Honestly. So how do I deal with these things? I don't force myself to read when I'm having a bad day. Unless it's adult stuff that you actually have to read, but which I know it's in small chunks, and I give myself time and grace to get that stuff done. But if I'm just having a bad day, I don't force myself to read a book. If I'm having a bad week, I don't force myself to read a book. I do not force myself to look at letters if I don't think it's going to be a good thing for me, because then I just get more frustrated and then it's not enjoyable, and it's just something I don't do. I read out loud. If there's a ton of noise and I'm having a hard time concentrating, I read out loud. If I'm having a hard time comprehending what I'm reading, I read out loud. If I'm having just a bad ADHD day and my brain won't just shut off, I read out loud to drown out what's going on in here. And also it slows down my reading, and it doesn't slow down my reading. It slows down my brain so that I don't fill in words or wrong words. I have to focus and decode and read. Reading out loud if I'm temporarily having a hard time with an ADHD moment or a dyslexic moment, so I can just slow everything down and focus. Then usually about a paragraph or two, I can just continue, and it's, I can go back to read it silently, or I just continue reading out loud, or I just stop if it's just not working. I isolate words. A lot of the times I will take a pencil and follow along. That way it's harder for me to skip lines. It's harder for me to jump around and where I'm at and lose my place. If it's a little worse and the pencil's not working, I'll use a bookmark. And if it's even worse, I chunk. I get a piece of paper on top or a bookmark on bottom, and I chunk lines. But that was what I used to do a lot when I was a lot younger. I don't do that as often now, unless I'm reading like contracts that I have to understand and I have to absorb, and it's really important that I need to have this information and all of it. That's when I'll go to that. Audiobooks while physically reading, and mainly this is for my ADHD. If I can't focus to read and I still want to absorb the story, I will read an audiobook while reading the book. So it's stimulating my brain two ways. One, I'm getting in my ears, and that way if something moves or I have to look up or I temporarily lose my space or I get distracted, it's still going in my ears, and that way I can find my place and just continue on. And then I'm physically reading it, which, it helps me focus better, because if I'm just doing audiobook, my brain can go off into la la land and I lose everything I just heard. If I'm just reading the book, my brain again can go off into la la land and I don't absorb anything I've just read. That way I'm stimulated twofold, one by putting my eyes to letters and two by hearing the letters that I'm putting my eyes to. And plus the narrators are pretty cool and they give me another layer to the story, and it makes me remember more because with ADHD, there's working memory problems. With the working memory problems, that's why I annotate. That's why when you see books, you see this, and I don't annotate for like feelings. I annotate for information. I color code it, and if I'm like, wait, this happened, I go back and I check, and that just helps with those kinds of things. I also read where I can fidget. I have mainly a pencil. Fidget to gum. I read in my recliner. That way I can read in multiple sitting positions and switch my sitting positions quickly without pulling me out of the story. Also, reading sometimes can be a hyperfocus. If you don't know what hyperfocus is, it is to a person with ADHD, or to me, it is where your brain will focus on one thing and it does not let anything else in or through. There has been stories and times where I have read and lost hours, not even realizing time passing. And hyperfocus can be a good thing while reading because I tend to read faster when I'm in hyperfocus mode, or it can be bad because then I don't do things I need to do, like eating or going to sleep, or, some of those things. So yeah. Also, I don't know. I don't know if I should point this out, or maybe if you can never unsee this, but that's an alien. Right there. Alien face. I've had this china set since I was little because my mom got it for my grandma. Our dining room, we had an open concept house, kind of like your dining room was like kind of part of the living room. It was open. If you ever had a sleepover or slept on the couch, that head would freak me out when I was little. So it still looks like an alien. So that's all I can see when I see that. Every video, alien. Right there. Anyways, back. Focus. Reading can sometimes be a hyperfocus. Let me think about this for a second. That is what I have. I hope this video is helpful. I hope that you learned something. I don't know what else to say. Just know that in this dyslexia community, it is repeated that 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. It is a lot more common than you would think. And also with ADHD, a lot of the times ADHD doesn't come alone. ADHD comes with friends, like dyslexia or other disabilities. The point of this video is to maybe make somebody aware that not everybody can learn the same way. Not everybody can learn how to read the same way. I have heard somewhere, and I can't remember where, neurotypical brains, when they learn how to read, it's like a car taking the freeway. And that is what the wires in their brain do. When a dyslexic learns how to read, it's like their brain taking the country roads to get to the same place. And that's just how it happens for us. We just have to learn differently than people without dyslexia. It has to be explained further than people without dyslexia. My daughter has dyslexia and ADHD, which is how I got diagnosed. I have her in tutoring, and she breaks it down to layers of language. Basically, my daughter is going to learn the history of language and what layer of language, Anglo-Saxon, Latin, and Greek things are, to be able to learn how to decode the word and learn how to spell the word. Things that I've just memorized of how these words are and spelled actually have meaning as to why it is. And I had no idea. But now I am learning because my daughter's in tutoring and she's being taught how to read specifically that makes sense for somebody with dyslexia. I will also link another YouTube video below from the doctor who created the curriculum that my daughter is learning from, and she has like an hour-long video explaining what dyslexia is, a lot of the problems with dyslexia, and if you really have an hour and really want to know this information, I'll link it for you below. But it is, in my opinion, fascinating, but that could be just because it's me. And that's what I'm dealing with. And my daughter. And that's what she's dealing with. And yeah, I am not sure what else to say. So I will conclude this video with, I don't know. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. If you want the story of how I grew up in public school and how they discovered I had dyslexia and all of that, let me know in the comments below and I'll make a separate video. If you want the story of how I decided to get tested for ADHD, leave a comment below and I will tell you that story. If you don't, that's cool too. I think I'm done. That's all I have to say. Happy mental health. Know that your mental health is important and to just not let things go because you never know. If you have ADHD and you're just not getting diagnosed, you could be missing out on some important tools on how to make your life easier. Okay, bye. I forgot what I was saying. ADHD. There's Stella. Filming a video. Wanna come up? Can you get up here? Stella! 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 Whoa! Okay, get down.